Center for Democratic Development CDD. They've highlighted alarming figures regarding the cost of winning elections in Ghana, raising serious concerns about the future of democratic governance and the country's battle against corruption. Now, take a listen to this. According to the report, securing victory in both presidential and parliamentary elections now requires an estimated $150 million and an additional 10 million Ghana cedis. That's if you want to win a parliamentary election in this country or a presidential election in this country, to be elected as member of parliament to serve and as president to serve, you must have or spend at least $150 million and an additional 10 million Ghana cedis. Now, this report attributes this significant cost to the increasing monetization of the electoral process, a trend it warns is entrenching corruption and weakening accountability within public office. Now, Dr. Kojo Pompone Asante, Director of Programs at CDD Ghana, expressed his concern about the situation during a presentation before the Constitutional Review Committee, calling the situation alarming. But this is not the first time CDD has put out numbers like this, except to say that this time around, the numbers have gone up quite sharply and concerning. Now, Dr. Jonathan Asante Otchere is a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. He's a political analyst. He's joining us on the telephone right now. Dr. Asante Otchere, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Hot Edition.
Good evening, Alfred, and good evening to your listeners.
And as I indicated earlier, this is not the first time, really, that we're hearing some value put to the money that politicians spend in order to be elected to serve as civil or public servants, for that matter. Now, we're hearing from the CDD latest that $150 million at the least is what you have to spend to be elected as either a member of parliament or a president, and an additional 10 million Ghana cedis. That is if you want to get in as president of the Republic of Ghana. I mean, how concerning are these figures for you?
Yeah, they're really concerning that apart from these figures being mind-boggling, it is quite overwhelming that you will need to spend that much in order to be elected as president and, for that matter, as an MP. Now, the point is that how many Ghanaians who have worked in the public sector or public service do have such an amount? Well, in our part of the world, to mention $150 million is huge. And obviously, you are going to push away people with fine brains that do not have what it takes to raise this kind of amount to be able to compete or contest. So, by and large, you are going to elect probably more than this. We are going to elect people who are overly corrupt. We are going to elect people who do not really care as to how much they intend to spend as long as power is within their grasp. That is the kind of democracy we are finally ending up with. I have said, without number, that this delegate system must be modified, because the delegate system, takes a greater chunk of the expenditures that the politicians incur. And if they do not modify that, then certainly this trend is going to continue and even come at an alarming rate in the next election. Well, I don't know for sure how they're able to arrive at such a calculation. But what this means is that an individual cannot single-handedly do this. So that individual will have to, spread his or her tentacles to be able to rope in financiers. And that person may not be so much bothered about who the financiers are or where the money is coming from. Whether it's coming from the mining, the gamsayers, whether it's coming from money launderers, whether it's coming from, ritualists and so on and so forth. As long as they'll be able to raise this kind of huge money, they are good to go. They just want to have power. And that is it. And we need to also bear in mind that if somebody is going to raise that kind of money to be able to expend and take care of his or her campaign and to win, it means that they will have to find a means of recouping that money back into their coffers or back to where they got that money from. And that could be either giving out juiciest contracts to people who financed, and then, of course, it will be corruption-ridden. Apart from that, procurement processes and other things could easily be loosened to ensure that these people have a way of recouping the expenditures they would have incurred in the course of the process of getting elected. And you will see that there is going to be a correspondent increment in the debt profile of the country. Because as long as contract prices are overrated, overpriced, it will go back to the state. It will go back to the state. So there is that corresponding measure between financing this political campaigning and then the debt profile of the nation going up. So if we were able to raise our debt from 120 to 721 billion, all these are part from getting elected through the delegate system, getting elected nationally, the campaigning, the fueling, the what's it called, the hotel accommodation. I mean, name them. There are huge sums of money that are needed to be able to get yourself elected. And so this is where we've come to. And there is a need for us to, have a thorough understanding and investigation and discussion of this particular issue. Other than that, our democracy will collapse one day because we'll be electing criminals.
And you see, you outlined the issues quite clearly, and it's fundamental, Dr. Asante Otchere, because you outlined the fact that, one, what we're going to be faced with is that these persons who are getting to these public offices are not really going to care about where the money is coming from. And so if it's coming from galamsey operators who come in and say, you know what, I'm going to fund your campaign, but make sure you don't also touch my business, and pretend to be fighting illegal mining. And then it's going to dip in corruption, as you indicated. And also, the most concerning one is that fine brains, people with good ideas who do not have that much money, cannot be elected into office to serve. And then also we're having to then open up the avenue for criminals to be elected into public office in this country. Because if you're talking about $150 million and an additional 10 million Ghana cedis, if you are contesting for president, if you want to win, I mean, what should be the solution to this? Because we've been having this conversation for quite a while, where we talk about the monetization of our politics. And so if you don't have this much money, you cannot win an election in Ghana. What should be the way forward? What should be the measures and policies in place to address this matter?
Well, I don't know, but I think that the reverse has been the case in this country. People win elections, they form government before they are made to declare their assets. Because if it were to be the case that the moment you got elected as a presidential candidate, you will have to declare your assets. Or even when you intend to contest into that public office, because the moment you are elected as a candidate, you are a public figure. So why wouldn't we let them declare their assets in that process, instead of they winning and forming government before they do so? Now, if they are supposed to do so, then we will have known, what their value is. But in actual fact, you must be a responsible candidate to be able to raise this kind of money. Other than that, you see, the consequences are that these smaller parties will forever remain smaller because they don't have the potential to win. And they may have the best of candidates, but they will not get the opportunity to run the affairs of this country. That being said, we need to, as I said earlier on, to have a real look at this delegate system. It is either we allow party card-bearing members in a particular area to take part in the voting process. They can be executives. Nobody asked them to become executives. But they should not have the opportunity to be the sole deciders as to who becomes a candidate, of a particular party before they go for the national one. We should be able to expand the base. If we do expand the base, it will be more driven by politics of ideas instead of, it would have been a contest of ideas instead of the one whose pocket is bigger. Because we've seen people who have gotten elected into several offices or positions in this country that you see that they are next to nothing, but they are just empty. But who are you to say that the person, should leave that particular portfolio? But he got elected. He used his resources to do so. Remember, an MP said that if anybody is ready to pay this, he's also ready to pay that because he's touched dollars and to be able to do so. But they belong to the political class. And we have not been interested in as to what kind of job he does, how he's able to stash dollars, and so on and so forth. And so, if we are not careful with things of that nature, this democracy will crash along the line. So I think that the two main political parties should have a real look at this delegate system. They must start from there. And I'm reliably informed that the MPP, as part of gathering, going about this committee, doing their work and other things, they seem to be ready to propose a modification, of the delegate system. And if they are able to do so, I think that would be a step forward, because we cannot continue like this. The next time you are not able to raise these resources, you don't really care where you're going to get the money from. And that is not the best way to grow democracy.
And some have proposed that this conversation about state funding of political parties should also be an avenue to explore if we have to deal with the increasing monetization of our politics and its attendant, negative effects, as you have outlined quite clearly.
See, yeah, the issue is political funding, funding of political campaign. I am not too for this state sponsoring, political parties. We may end up having mushrooming. We have so many political parties being founded or being formed. So they go and contest because they will get some state funding. But if you really mean business, I think there should be more mergers along the line. When you have these smaller parties merging, I think that in itself will also help solve some of these problems, because they'll be able to put their resources together and be able to execute a campaign, that will sync well with the people of Ghana. The other thing too is that poverty. Poverty is the main enemy within this fraternity that we are talking about, because now people think that, look, these people, when they come and they win, that is it. So we are going to get our pound of flesh. If they win and we don't see them again, that is all good. And so they will all go all out, like you see happening in the delegate system. They will go all out. Some will be hiding. They will not come and vote until it gets to the dying embers of the voting process. And then somebody will have marshals and resources, pay them before they come. So I think that if there is no giver, there is no receiver. All have sinned and are fallen short before the glory of God. And so we may have to have a relook entirely. Because I tell you what, the kind of resources that the MPP expended before the final elections is mind-boggling. Look at the number of elections that they conducted at the branch level, at the constituency, and then they went regional, and then, they went national. Then after that, they did orphan, and then they did where they have MPs. Then you saw the two presidential primaries. They did 8 internal elections. And you know that every level of election, you create acrimony, and they're going to spend a lot of money. So we need to have a real look at some of these processes. Other than that, if the internal processes leading to the election for the external one, if we do not have a real look at some of these things, I think that our democracy will not survive. And we are just going to be electing criminals.
But it's not an issue just with the NPP. You saw it as well play out in the NDC. They also had their own in internal elections where resources were visibly at play, is it not? I mean, money sharing was also captured. So it's a collective political problem, or a sin, as you have described it, that has to be addressed.
Certainly, but maybe because they were in opposition then, you could see that they were quite moderate. You remember how much it was alleged that Dr. Baumia raised for 800,000 people, 400 cities per head. Mr. Kennedy also raised about 300, we're told. And if you do the multiplication, I mean, how is that possible? So the CDD's report may not be far from wrong. It is indeed, some, I think, figures that we need to interrogate. I think that it is bordering on factual, some kind of accuracy in terms of the figures that they are giving out. Because if you do that multiplication, that was for the internal. Look at the external one as well. So the two main political parties, yes, they need to have a relook at that. Because in the political class, they decide not to give money, and they are disciplined along that line. To the delegate, how are you going to have access to that money? And I think that is the best way to go. If you need to pay money at all, that money should be routed through the party, so that the party will be the one giving that transportation and accommodation, not individuals doing so that individuals who are caught doing so are disqualified from the process. But the political class will not have what it takes to crack that whip, because they believe that could create some kind of internal confusion. But as long as the contestants, the politicians, decide that, or the party decides that everybody is supposed to give this money to the party, let's say 1 million Ghana cedis per contestant, these are the number of delegates coming. This is what we are going to give, as some of those coming from this direction, coming from that. And that is where it should end. If that happens, then it means that it's an official kind of honorarium given. And it's not as though the one who has more money giving more money. You give 1,000, I give 2,000. You give 2,000, you give 3,000. No, that's not the best way to go. I think that thing should be modified, and the payment system should be done through the party. Because whatever be the case, these people, some of them may not be working. And as long as he is coming to come and vote for someone that he believes that is going to occupy a position, he will have to demand something. But that should go through the party, and the party should give, that kind of honorarium to the delegate, so that will reduce the corruption in that area as well.
Dr. Jonathan Otchere, appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Hot Edition.
Welcome, sir.
That's all I have here on